we were in all the newspapers, it was reviewed, it was on all the TV shows, and it was a Sunday Times bestseller, Rich and Judy book club pick, Radio 4 book of the week. But I remember reading one review of a woman who was waiting for a diagnosis of dementia, and she said, having read that book, I now think, like, bring it on, bring on the challenge. Some days I just want to sit and completely absorb myself in a book and in a different world, and that is like a holiday. And I think that we all, after the year and a half that we've had, we all need a little holiday.
Hello, my name's Nicole and welcome to another episode of The Big Chat. Oh, I did a kind of weird little wink there. I'm very, maybe that's why I'm twitchy, because I'm super excited to be talking to someone that's become a good pal of mine, actually, I'd like to say, over the last few weeks. But more interestingly than that, for all of you, she's a journalist, she's a writer, she's written for some amazing publications and newspapers. She's been on TV, she's written books, she's ghostwritten books, she's written her own books, and she's got some exciting things that she's developing at the moment. So we were having a chat and we thought, what better way to get it out to you, the general public, than to bring her onto the Big Chat and have a conversation about what she's doing. So I'd love to introduce you to Anna Wharton. Anna. Hi.
What an introduction.
I know. I do like to do a bit of an intro.
It's a very good intro.
Would you prefer I tailored it back a bit?
No.
Did I miss anything? No. What did I miss?
I don't think you missed anything. I think it's good.
You've done a lot though. I mean, even when we spoke the other morning, it's like you were telling me what you've been up to and what you've done in the past, and there's a lot.
Yeah.
We are, I think, of similar eras in the world.
We are, yes.
But you've done a lot. When you started out, sort of take us right back to the beginning, because we're going to talk about lots of things. But
so I've been a journalist for about 26 years. Mm-hmm. So I started on local newspapers, and then I moved into magazines, like the weekly women's magazines, that kind of thing. And then I went into national newspapers. So I worked at The Sun and I worked at the Daily Mail, where I was an executive editor there. Yeah. And then when my daughter was born 9 years ago, I went freelance. So that meant that I was writing for the newspapers, but I could write for all of them, like The Times, The Guardian, The Telegraph, Grazia, and these kind of things. And mostly I would write about my life. So I'd write about issues in my life and just talk about what was going on and issues of the day and things. And then I started writing books for other people. So I ghosted memoirs of other people. So the first one that I did was a woman who was born deaf and then went blind in her 30s and then had cochlear implants so she could hear for the first time when she was like 38 or something. So imagine you've never heard your mother's voice, you've never heard a piece of music, you've never heard birdsong, and I just thought, wow, this is amazing. I need to, get into this. So as a ghostwriter, you're kind of occupying somebody's head. You have to get in there and write as if you are that person. So it's a really intimate relationship that you develop with your authors. It was really cool. And then after that, I ghosted a few more books. One of them was longlisted for the Orwell Prize, which is kind of the biggest political writing prize. That was a book about FGM. And then I ghosted a book called Somebody I Used to Know, which was the first memoir of somebody with dementia who was living with dementia. So it was really interesting to kind of look at the world from her point of view. So I tend to do kind of strong women, strong female activists, and just people who have really interesting stories. I don't do celebrities. I do kind of people with really good life stories. People who've got a message they want to get out there. What I tend to write is kind of strong female stories. Yes. Strong kind of activist females generally. And yeah, people who want to establish authority in a certain field as well. So lots of my authors kind of were unknown when I started working with them, and then now they have a huge platform and they're on TV all the time, and they've written other books, and they go around the world, and you know, it changes their lives. It really does.
And I'm interested, do these women predominantly, do they find you, or is it something that you find information about someone, you're like, wow, that's really interesting story, or is it a bit of both?
Well, exactly. No, I find them. So I've been lucky enough to work with people that I kind of cherry picked, I suppose, because I found their stories so fascinating.
Wow.
So Wendy Mitchell, who has dementia, I remember I was just scrolling on Facebook and I saw a video about what it's like to live with dementia. I thought, I don't want to know about that. It's a bit depressing. And then I thought, well, I'm a writer, so obviously I now need to go back and look at it because it's piqued my interest. So I watched it and then thought, wow, that's so fascinating. Everybody needs to know this. It's really inspiring. So I contacted her and asked her if she'd be interested in doing a book. And so, yeah, but her book sold all over the world. We had a huge deal in America and all over about 13 different countries. And she has another book coming out in January.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
And I mean, like you say, it's things that people have got a really strong message, and they're strong people.
Yeah, definitely, and it helps so many people. I mean, with the dementia book, somebody I used to know, we were in all the newspapers. It was reviewed. It was on all the TV shows, and it was a Sunday Times bestseller, Rich and Judy Book Club pick, Radio 4 book of the week. But I remember reading one review of a woman who was waiting for a diagnosis of dementia, and she said, having read that book, I now think, like, bring on the challenge.
Wow.
So that, for me,
is everything.
Yeah, it's more, I mean, the prizes are nice and accolades are nice, but to have a woman who's facing a diagnosis and feels she can not only face it now, but, you know, embrace the challenge, I think that's everything.
Well, it's making a real impact, isn't it?
It is.
Through your words.
I know, right?
Through the written word. So you're a novelist.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's not going to be any funny noises going on from our podcast producer, Giles Paley Phillips. He's up to some tricks this morning, is all I can say. So you're a novelist as well. So what do you write about when you're not ghostwriting?
So my debut novel was out in April, and it is called The Imposter. It is the story of Chloe, who works in a local newspaper archiving stories, and she becomes a little obsessed with one story in particular, which is a 5-year-old girl who went missing 25 years ago. So she would be the same age as Chloe is now. And yeah, when her nan goes into a care home because she has dementia, she decides to kind of fall into this story, and she ends up going to live with the family of the missing girl. Yeah.
Wow.
I know, right? And then once she gets in there into the house, it's kind of like, who's the most dangerous here?
Oh my God.
I know.
I'm getting like this whole like vibe off you, Anna. I didn't even know was there.
It's amazing. The dark one.
The dark.
This is where
I knew there was a reason why we got on. How long did it take you to write this book?
Oh my God, I nearly swore then. 7 years.
7 years.
Oh, it was awful because I had to keep stopping to write other people's books.
Sure.
So, and writing a novel is a torturous process.
I bet.
I mean, it's something that you feel compelled to do, but it's not. It's mostly not enjoyable. It's awful, and you know it requires a lot of hand holding as well. And also, you know, with my ghosted, the authors that I ghost, I mean that requires a lot of hand holding because it's difficult. It's a long journey to go from telling your story, sharing it with somebody else, pinning the words to the page.
Yeah.
I mean, the two things are quite different because obviously when you're writing a novel, you're creating characters, you're creating worlds, you're creating a setting, and you're creating a plot, and you want to have a really good twist if it's that kind of book. But when you're doing your memoir, I mean, that's equally as exposing. So, yeah.
But I mean, where do you, the ideas? Did you have a sort of idea, a concept? Because 7 years is obviously it's quite a long time in the making.
Yeah.
So did that change along the way?
Oh my
Maybe
God, yeah.
influences, like you mentioned, dementia. Did you sort of pull on some resources that you were learning along the way and integrate those in?
I was doing an MA in creative writing at the University of East Anglia at the time. When Wendy Mitchell's book came out, somebody I used to know, and I was looking for my twist for my novel, which I'd been searching for all these years, and I was in creative writing workshops, so I was sharing my work with other people, and it finally came to me, like the moment. And I mean, that twist appeared in draft 7. I mean, so I'd written that book 7 times. That's 700,000 words.
Goodness me.
And then finally, I had the eureka moment, and I tested it with all my workshop buddies, and I wrote the whole plot out, and then I saved the twist on the end and got everyone to guess what you think the twist is. And out of 11 people, nobody guessed. So Brilliant. It's like, great, well, I'm onto something now. So it's and it is a collaborative process as well. Like writing is a lonely process because it's just you in your pajamas, scratching your head and looking out the window. So if you've got people you can bounce ideas off and share ideas and test things, and readers who'll look at things. And if you've got somebody who is actually published, which we had because all our tutors were published, then that's even better.
Did you always want to write? Was that always your passion?
Yes, absolutely. I was very lucky that I knew what I was going to do.
Yeah.
I left school at 16, and because I knew what I wanted to do, I didn't see any point in going to university when all I wanted to do was be a writer. And I wrote a Substack about this the other day, actually, about how I just always wanted to be a writer. And I wrote about my story I did some really rubbish jobs just to be a writer, just to get in with the company at whichever level I could that owned all the newspapers, and I worked for free, and I used my annual leave to go and do work experience, and just kept going. I want to be a writer. And then I manifested it.
You did. Well, exactly. That's it. Talk about this Substack. For those who don't know what Substack is.
Yeah, I only recently discovered it myself. It's kind of like a blog newsletter, I suppose. It's a hosting platform. So if you find someone interesting that you want to follow, you just subscribe to their Substack. So you don't get, it's not like a site like Facebook or Twitter or anything. But if the person that you're interested in writes an interesting a newsletter, it comes straight to your inbox. And also the other thing about it is that it has a comment section. So I write about kind of issues of the day, the same kind of things that I write for national newspapers, I put on my Substack. And often newspapers are behind paywalls and things, so you kind of get to see what I'm writing. Or I write lessons for writing, but I realise that my writing lessons tend to be life lessons as well, and I just use my experience and the experience of others as a springboard. So while I was waiting to come on today, I was just sitting in my car writing a thing about how comparison is the thief of joy, and how it's really hard as a writer not to be jealous of other people, and their successes are you could see them as your failures, and I think all of us feel a bit like that. So yeah, I use my Substack for issues of the day and writing lessons and book related things, feminist rants, that kind of thing.
And you were talking the other day, and I know this is a big thing that we were going to talk about today as well, about the sort of the joy of play and how we've sort of lost a bit of that in our lives recently. And you did a Substack. Could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so I was I'm working with another writer at the moment. We're working on a TV treatment. So a treatment is, if you think you've got a great idea for a drama, you put together a synopsis of each episode, and then you flog it to a TV production company. And the TV idea that we're working on is based on fact. It's something that happened in the 1930s, which I didn't know about. It's so exciting. It involves MI5 and royalty and assassination attempts, and it's really cool. But we had to kind of broaden out that story to because this guy was married, but he was also having an affair, and there were spies involved. But you have to kind of broaden out the story, broaden out the characters, ask yourself, what do they want? What, and you end up creating worlds and characters and relationships. And it was just so nice to play. And, kids do this, our kids come and tell us silly stories, and they sit with their Barbies and make up stories, or if they want to get themselves out of trouble, they make up stories. But we don't do that so much as adults. We don't just let our imaginations run wild and play. And we can. I mean, it's kind of like having a little holiday for your brain to just make up stories. So there's one workshop that I do where I get a bunch of people together, and we have a bunch of old newspapers and pile of scissors, and we just start by kind of cutting out stories or headlines or words or pictures or anything that we just piques our interest. And then we just sit around and make up stories about these, and how far can we push it? What's the twist? Who's this person? What do they want? Who are they married to? What do they hate? And you just have a good play.
It's like a giant jumble of gossip, and
exactly,
just like it. Just let your imagination, like you say, like, oh, what are they like as a person? And it's because we don't play like that anymore, do we? And we both have daughters the same ages, and they're quite fiery, I'd say. Our daughters, quite little powerhouses. But my daughter, when she does writing, she's like doing all these stories, like you say, and I'm just like,
and there's no reason for us to stop telling stories. No. And and people who want to write, you don't have to come to this workshop just because you want to be a writer. You can come just to have some creative play. But if you do want to write, you'll always leave with a poem, a short story idea, a novel idea, the start of a plot or an interesting character. So it's a really nice way to, because always writers are asked, where'd you get your ideas from? And that's where we get our ideas from. We get our ideas from sitting around the pool, chatting with our mates, or we get our ideas from reading a story in a newspaper. And also, you're always thinking, how far can I push this story? What dark twist can happen? And so it's really exciting.
So the workshops that you do at the moment, you've been doing workshops. You've been doing workshops for quite a long time, haven't you? But there's a new thing that you're going to be doing. Well, it's not new, but you're going to be starting to do, isn't there?
Oh, yeah. So the workshops are kind of ongoing. So I'm doing one at Flow Yoga. I'm doing one there soon. Also, I do mentoring. So if people want to write, whether it's their memoir or they want to get into fiction, I do one-to-one mentoring where I have kind of small groups of people. So it's kind of a really safe space, but they have a one-to-one with me each week, and we discuss their writing, see where they got stuck that week. And then we also have a closed group where I can share. So say, for example, somebody had a problem with dialogue. How do you do dialogue? What are the tips? Then we can share that kind of stuff, so everybody gets something from it. And also sharing work can make you feel really vulnerable. So not everybody wants to do that in a big group. And somebody would rather do that one-to-one. So I'm creating this little writing nook.
I love the fact that you're calling it a nook.
I know.
I just like that.
Yeah.
It's cute.
And it's just a really cozy space at the end of my garden where people can come and sit with me. We can talk craft. So if they're stuck on something or they don't know where to start, we can do that together. Writing exercises, we can have groups there. We can have reading groups. We can have writing groups. Or it's a place for them to just have kind of some quiet time to write. But they have me on hand. Yeah,
which is great.
Serving tea, coffee and biscuits, no doubt.
Amazing.
I know.
And they get to see all your beautiful things in your house. You've got such. I do. I just love all your things. When I first came over, I was just like, oh look, all your art, and I just think it's just a reflection of people's homes are their sanctuaries as far as I'm concerned, and even where they work, it's a reflection of them in some way, shape, or form if they're creative. So I can only imagine what your writer's nook's going to be like. I think it'll be very cozy and very interesting.
And not real.
But just
and fairy lights. And just
where you can be expressive.
Like a whole wall of cork for you to pin your whole plot to, and
it's amazing.
I
mean, I always find that. So this would be an interesting thing for you to answer for me. My vocabulary is limited. There's certain words that I would just use a lot, I always use too many exclamation marks. I know you're not meant to use 3, and I just say to everyone, I don't care, I'm doing that. That's just my thing.
Yeah.
But I'll say wow and amazing, phenomenal and epic and all these words.
Yeah.
What would you, if you were going to be a writer? Say if I decided I wanted to write a book, I was like, I'm going to write a book.
Yeah.
Is the best way to widen your vocabulary or to widen your use of words to read, would you say?
Oh, of course.
I know that makes logical sense, but
Yeah.
I don't have, my sister has and my son, lucky thing, they have photographic memories. They just literally absorb things, whereas I get flustered and forget someone's name who I know very dearly. Do you know what I mean? So I don't feel like my brain retains knowledge as best it does, but I guess it's like a muscle. The more that you use it, the more it retains.
Reading is, none of us...
I do read, by the way, but
reading
but not
is
enough.
the answer to being a writer.
Yeah.
If you want to be a writer, you have to be a good reader.
Yeah.
So it will expand your vocabulary. It will expand your creativity. I remember when I went to do my MA at university, and my editor at Bloomsbury at the time thought I was teaching the MA, because she's like, why are you going? But I went to read. I went to have a wider reading list as well. And that's what I got out of it. So yeah, totally reading. But also remember that if you're doing your own memoir, the most important thing, especially when I'm ghosting somebody, is to capture their personality. Yeah. So if you are that kind of person...
Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Which, yeah.
Maybe I'll cut a little bit of those.
Maybe just a couple of exclamation marks.
But it's also, you have to... That's how people connect you.
Yeah.
Whether it's in this kind of environment or in your words. Yeah. So they have to hear your voice. Yeah. So don't be afraid to express yourself in that way. There aren't any rules. You learn the rules to write, and then you break the rules because you're doing it your way. And that's how we all make great new books. And that's how we all break into new fields and genres. So it's, you don't
There's no one way.
No.
But it's good to... I mean, how many books do you think you've read?
Oh my God.
Come on, that's a question for you.
Oh God,
how many books do you think you've read? How many books could you read in a day?
Oh, well, I probably only read one book a day, but there are days when I will just sit.
Only one a day.
Well, yeah, but I let myself. And the thing is that people feel guilty for reading. I don't. I mean, luckily it's my job to read as well, but some days I just want to sit and completely absorb myself in a book and in a different world. And that is like a holiday. And I think that we all, after the 1.5 years that we've had, we all need a little holiday. I mean, how much better is it to...
A brain holiday, basically.
Yeah, a brain holiday. Yeah. And how much better is it to sit and read a book all day rather than scroll Twitter and look at pictures of people that you went to school with 30 years ago on Facebook and their holidays. I mean, I kind of think it's better to read a book.
Totally. But also, like you say about losing your imagination, because I tend to read a lot of books that are, they're either educational or, inspirational, but I don't lose myself with my imagination enough. And a friend of mine who's also a writer, she said to me ages ago, just Faye Weldon, she rediscovered Faye Weldon.
That's your friend?
Yes. But literally, she was just like, oh my God, why did we stop reading all these books, years ago? I was reading them when I was a teenager. And it was just rediscovering that, sort of really losing yourself in that imagination, like you said again. And that
also
play.
Reading books that you read as a teenager when your life's moved on.
Yes.
I mean, we kind of understand. I'd love to read those Judy Blume books again.
Judy Blume. Goodness me. Yeah, there's a couple of other books I could think of that I'm not going to mention. But you're right, because it's even like watching something on the television or The Matrix makes a lot more sense to me now than it did 20 years ago. My son watched The Matrix and it made sense to him straight away. And I was like, okay, there's some progression there. But you're right. It's really interesting to revisit things. But I think also just rather than just, it's good to have a mix rather than one thing or the other when you're reading.
Yeah, I mean, the memoir that I ghost tends to be quite novelistic. So I tend to approach that because I think it's a really good way of, if you've got a message that you want to impart, it's actually a really good way to connect a reader with that by making a memoir or an autobiography sound like a novel and be quite filmic in the scenes that you're describing or the emotions you're describing, because then you're almost connecting with somebody, and they're not having to do the hard work. This story is just washing over them, but yet they're learning at the same time. So I find that's a really good way of kind of educating people without those really tired like non-fiction books that I read too, but you're right, they're kind of hard work.
It can be if it's just all you're reading. I think it's a little bit, it just becomes hard work.
It's all balance.
It's all balance, exactly. And what about Audible? Do you listen to...
Oh my God, I love Audible.
Do you? Do you listen to a lot? So you listen to a lot of books as well as read?
My day is, every day I read 3 newspapers. Every day, if I'm walking somewhere, I'm listening to Audible. I'm listening to a book on Audible. And then I'm ending the day, or I'm writing all day and ending the day, reading a book in bed. But I love Audible. And some people don't want to sit and read a book. Some people don't have time to. But Audible's great. I love it. I have a subscription.
And also I think, like podcasts as well. I love it. I always used to be, my sister lives in Wales, and I'd go and drive to Wales, and it'd be like a really long drive, or go and see my mum, and it'd be like, oh my God, it's so long. Now I love it because I can listen to podcasts. I can listen to books. It just... for me, driving is, not at the moment, you can't get anywhere, but at the moment it's great just to be able to listen to consume from so many different places, whether it's at home, doing the washing up, driving your car, walking the dog, whatever it is, we can get that information in so many ways, can't we?
I have to tell you a funny story about when I was listening to my own book on Audible. Do you think
that must have been
Are you allowed to do that?
Of course you're allowed. They
really
don't say, "Are you the author? You must not listen."
Anyway, I was listening to my book on Audible, and the actress who was reading it had made one of the characters, Patrick Kyle, who's like the father of the missing girl, she gave him an Irish accent. So I'm lying in the bath listening to it, and then he starts talking this Irish accent. I'm like, what?
That's not how I imagined it.
That's not how he sounds. But the thing is, he's a second generation of an Irish immigrant family. So I could understand why she'd done it, because in his dialogue, he speaks with that kind of inflection. But his accent is a Fen accent, which is, I don't know if you know what a Fen accent is.
No, I don't think I do.
Well, I suppose it's a little bit like a Somerset accent.
Okay.
It's got that kind of...
Somerset twang.
Yeah, a little twang.
Yeah.
So he certainly isn't Irish, but it's really weird as a novelist to hear somebody bring your novel to life on Audible and then be like, wait, what?
So do you not get input in that then? Do they?
Well, I picked the actress.
Yeah.
So they sent me a few and said, who would you
like?
Yeah. So I did know she was doing it, but they just go off and record it for a few days, and then I heard it when it came out on on Audible when it was published.
But how was that experience, other than obviously that? How was that experience listening to your own novel?
It was really cool.
Yeah, I imagine it would be, actually.
Because the thing is, when you're writing, a lot of the time when you're writing as a novelist, you're thinking, is anyone buying this? Like, is anyone believing this? Because the magic between you and the page doesn't exist, because you're making it up. So it's really hard to buy into that. But when you are listening to it, the magic returns. It's really nice. I was really invested in that story, even though I knew what was going to happen.
And did you listen to all of it?
Yeah.
Start to finish?
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's rather wonderful. I rather like that.
It was good, yeah.
So talk to me a bit more about your Nook, your little Nook, writer's Nook. Yeah. So how is this going to work? Is this going to be for adults? Is this going to be for children? Is this going to be for anyone? Like you say, you can mentor, you're going to do groups. So it's going to be a mix of things, yeah?
Yeah, I think it's a mix. I mean, it's really going to depend on what people want as well, because the mentoring, I think, works really well for those who want that one-to-one. I mean, everybody kind of, has a one-to-one contact, but some people just they're venturing into writing and they just want that hand-holding, which is the same, like I said, that I give to my authors that I ghost. But then also, kids, teenagers, to improve their creativity at school. And it's not just, and yes, it would improve their writing at school, but also it filters. Creativity begets creativity. So the more creative you are, the more creative you become.
So true.
Sometimes I listen to I listen to music a lot, and that makes me very creative, just because I love the way people. I mean, songwriting blows my mind, not in terms of the words, but in terms of the music. So yeah, you can do small things in your everyday to be more creative, whether it's listening to a piece of music, or the other day on my Twitter, I posted a friend of mine reading her flash fiction stories. That's like 3 minutes. You just sit down, have a cup of tea, listen to somebody read you a story, and then get on with your day. But for the rest of the day, you've got these characters swimming around. So I think it would be really nice to explore short stories, because often when you have a group of people doing short story workshops, that's really interesting, and you end up talking about issues, life issues,
Definitely.
what that story throws up for you. It's not always just how to be a writer, but obviously if you want to be a writer, or if you already are a writer and you want a mentor, you want somebody to bounce ideas off, if you want to be a writer, then we can do all that work together in terms of how to write dialogue, how to set scenes, those kind of things. But just if you want to learn about books, if you want to learn about how to be more creative, I mean, there's like lots of fun games, especially that it would be nice for teenagers as well, because I haven't done too much work with teenagers. I used to go into schools and speak to them about it, but there's lots of really nice tricks to do, and it'd be so fun to do that with a group of teenagers, come up with stories. And
Oh, definitely. And it's a way, it's like with all things, isn't it? It's a way of expressing themselves and just letting loose for a bit. Actually, it's doing something different.
But it will also be a quiet space, and I think lots of people want to escape from their house, having been locked into it. So it's a quiet space, it's some you time to go into the nook, to feel safe, to write. You've got somebody on hand who's been published, and to ask questions if you get stuck, or to listen to your words, to offer suggestions, and to read your work. Yeah, I'm really excited.
I think it's a great idea. I absolutely love it, as you know. Is it with writing books as well? Do you think have you got many more books in you to write? I mean, is it? Who is the person that says everyone has a book in them?
Oh, everyone says that.
Does everyone say that? Is that a thing? Is it true?
You can write my story, but it is true. Yeah, it is true. Everybody's got something they want to write about. So I've just finished writing my second novel. So my agent is selling my wares at the moment as we speak. And I mean, everybody's got something. I mean, I've got life experiences with my Substack, I share my life experiences and use them as a springboard to, when I write for the newspapers, like I wrote a piece of Telegraph the other day, which was sharing something about my life, and then branching out and talking to other people. I wrote a piece in the Observer actually a couple of months ago about not having a sense of belonging, and I heard from so many people who said, oh my god, finally you said how I've been feeling my whole life. And this was based on the character in my novel. So it's just, everybody has these things, it's just only a few of us are sharing them publicly, but not everyone has to share them publicly. But it's a very cathartic experience to share your story.
I mean, that's like, because I talked with a guest earlier about vulnerability and showing your vulnerability and sort of showing up with that. Because is that something that you've always done through your writing, through your own writing? Yeah. Have you always been happy with showing that vulnerability?
Yeah, I mean,
sharing on your own experiences, I suppose, in that sense.
Yeah, I am different in that way, that I have always shared, overshared, some might say.
Can't overshare, can you?
So I'm kind of used to that, and I've read the comment sections in national newspapers, and I've seen what they've written. It's not always favourable. That can be difficult, but not everybody has to do that. So they could share with me, but there's a certain responsibility that you have if I'm working with an author that I'm ghosting, or if I'm working with a mentee, or if I'm working with a group, that you can't, if people are going to open up to you, you have a responsibility to create a safe space for them to do that. Often people can't see the wood for the trees, so they're like, yeah, I know I've got a story, but I don't know where to start. And it's like, I kind of always imagine it as going into somebody's head. They've got all these files, paperwork everywhere. Yeah. It's really messy, and they need someone to just go in and go, okay, we're going to create this pile here, blah, blah, blah. We're going to file it all away. There you go. And I think that's why it is a cathartic experience, because it's difficult when things are happening to you to see the wood for the trees, because it's just all happening. And especially with life experiences you've had, you know, I behave a certain way because this happened when I was a child, but where do I start with writing that down? And I think it is a therapy. I mean, I've been sitting in people's living rooms for the last 25 years listening to their stories.
Yeah.
And I've stayed in touch with a lot of those people. A lot of them are my best friends, you know, to this day.
Yeah.
So you can't just go in, get what you need, get out again. That's why I suppose I describe it as hand-holding.
Yeah.
Because it's a really vulnerable experience too. And I always warn my authors when we start working together, this is going to feel uncomfortable because I'm going to ask you questions and perhaps things that you don't want to answer. And I remember with Wendy, all of them, there's always been a point where they didn't want to talk about something.
Yeah.
And I've had to really gently coax it out of them, and they felt better for it.
You're very good at that. I mean,
I know.
you are good at that. Definitely. And I think as well, something I sort of mentioned to a mutual friend of ours very early on when I met you was just that you always take time. You know, I'm always in a rush. I'm always rushing around doing this, doing that and everything. But you're someone that would be like, oh, have you got time for a cup of tea? And it's really nice actually. Or, you know, you've got time for a chat, and I'll just sit and have and it'd be like, oh, this is nice. We're getting to actually have a chat. And you've got, you have that, I don't know, you create some space there for people to communicate,
it's nice
which is
to be heard, isn't it?
Of course, absolutely. But sometimes it takes someone else saying that to you. Yeah. You know, we all want it. We all want to have that time to sit down and have a chat. But I guess that's part of your craft as well, is that you've been doing that with people, and you've been enabling them to slow down a bit and tell their story and listen. You're good at listening. You must be good at listening to be a writer. I know that.
Yeah, and I like stories. I mean, I whenever someone starts,
so you're just nosy.
Well, I'm nosy. Yeah, I mean that's the bottom line.
You just wanted to nose into my life.
I mean, if you work on a national newspaper, when I was there,
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
we were the first to know the stories.
Of course.
I mean, it was before internet, so you know, the stories would come through first. It was so exciting. It is really satisfying if you're nosy, but also just love stories. So I get really excited when people tell me stories, and I start thinking, you know, we're not between friends. Yes. But if they want to write something, I'm like, okay, yeah, they could start here and they can do this and blah, blah, blah. And I just think that people want to be heard. Mm-hmm. They don't necessarily want to go to therapy, but they know there's some stuff they'd like to work through, and they'd like to do that within their writing.
Yeah.
And I think that you can do that, like journaling and writing and sharing those experiences where you know that that's not going to go any further.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah, and just like, within friendships, of course, it's so nice to be heard.
It's so nice, but it was just something that I'd noticed, you know, during sort of coming out of lockdown, and everyone's sort of rushing around and dropping off, aren't we? We're all dropping off, picking up and stuff like that. But it was just, I was just very early on, I was like, oh no, I like Hannah. She's like, you know, should we sit down? I'm like, yeah, we'll sit down, we'll have a chat. Yeah, this is quite good. I don't have to go a million miles an hour all the time.
Yeah, you are a million miles an hour.
Yeah, and you don't need to be.
You see, I'm also a writer hermit, so I'm just in my house.
I was going to touch on this.
So any human contact is always much appreciated.
But you did say you quite like being a hermit.
I do love being a hermit.
See,
I wouldn't have it any other way. But I tell you what, when lockdown came and we were all locked in our houses, I was really smug about it. Like, this is my life anyway, so it's no different to me. And then I just slowly, through lockdown, just thought, yeah, that's not cool, Anna. Like, it's actually better to be out in the world than your life reading, writing, you know. So I think
that's an interesting reflection to have on lockdown then. So some people are learning that actually they want to be in more or chilling out more, doing that. But you're actually a bit more like, well, actually, I love being a hermit, but I also quite like interaction.
I definitely started out really smug about it. Well, it's no different for me. I didn't go to London for work anyway, blah, 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 you know. Yeah. And then like, it's not cool, Anna. You need to...
Brought up stuff for all of us, I guess, didn't it?
Yeah, some people want to stay in more. Some people want to go out more. And I think people, because it gave us that chance to stop and reflect, I think it's thrown up a lot of things for people within relationships, within families. And a lot of people have had a change of career.
Definitely.
They want to pursue things that they've always wanted to and dreamt of. So here I am.
So here you are, the Writer's Nook fairy that you're going to be.
Yeah.
So if people want to find out more about how to get involved, I mean, also, you know, as I mentioned to you as well, I mean, look, we're an agency, we write for people, and it's most of it's like business, PR, whatever, but I'm always interested in learning all the time. So this is open to anyone really, isn't it? This is like community, children, teenagers, adults, mentoring, businesses, workshops, parties.
Oh, really?
Well,
Kids parties?
No, not kids parties.
God.
But if you wanted, you could have groups of people a party of people that wanted to come together and do some writing together, like a book club you mentioned, things like that. You could literally open the floor up to anything.
Just thinking, I've spent like 9 years avoiding kids parties.
I was just thinking how you just want to be a hermit, and now you're like opening your garden.
It was just
the bottom.
It was just the idea of kids parties, but if it's not kids, I mean,
no kids parties.
5-year-olds.
We're not doing kids parties.
No, I was just imagining myself in like a clown outfit and like a flower that squirts water or something.
No.
So
that's not what we're going for here.
So for example, I've been writing polemic for newspapers for my entire career. So that's a column. So there might be business people who want to write columns to establish authority. They might then want to pitch them to newspapers, which they could do. Or they might want to do what I do, which is a Substack post. Or they might host a website and want to do a blog, a regular blog.
That's great. That's good to know.
They could have an interview with me, and then I can write them a blog post in the same way I would for the Daily Telegraph. Yeah. Make it sound great, lovely. And, you know, as an editor at the Daily Mail, I know how to do this. I've edited, people my whole life. So yes, you're right. It's for those kind of people. It's for perhaps parents who think, I just feel like my child needs a little bit more creativity in their life. I don't feel that what they're getting at school really delves into a book or delves into their ability to write creatively. It's for people who want to write their own books and they don't know where to start. And they want that one-to-one, or they'd rather be part of a group. Or it's for people who just want to come along to a workshop at somewhere like Flow or my little Writing Nook and just have some creative play and make up stories and have a laugh and share some of their own stories. I mean, it's always really fun.
I love that. And also, like you mentioned about Flow with Lucy McNeil at Flow Yoga. So if there's any other people that are listening that think, oh, that'd be a really nice thing to have at my... Yeah. They can contact you about that.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So how do they contact you, Anna?
Right.
How do they contact you? No phone numbers, please, live on this, please. No phone numbers today.
So my Substack, they can subscribe to my Substack. Yeah. So it's just Anna Wharton at Substack, I think. I mean, it's not an email address, but if you go onto Substack, substack.com and type in Anna Wharton, WHARTON, then you'll find my newsletter and you can subscribe. You can find me on Twitter at Wharton's Words.
I like that.
I know. The same on Instagram at Wharton's Words.
I still like that.
I know. I mean, like, do you want email addresses? Or?
No, I think that's everything. I think they can definitely find you, or they can contact us. But yeah, I think, well, it's really great. I love the fact that you are sharing all this creative knowledge that you've got over the years and helping other people with it. It's really exciting. I think it's like we mentioned when we were talking the other day, it's great when we can pull on our experiences and then use them to help other people. I think that's brilliant. Yeah. And writing is just, there's something really cathartic about writing. Definitely. I think I definitely need to do more reading.
Yeah, well then let's have a reading group.
I'm totally up for a book club. Seriously,
okay, let's do a book club.
I'm really up for a book club. Our guest that we just had on is totally like, she brought a book in, and yeah, I'm totally up for book club. Let's do a book club.
Yeah. Can
we do a sort of Big Chat / Writer's Nook book club?
That's
kind of sounds quite cool.
Great.
Okay, you heard it here first. Information for that will be received later on today. But no, I mean, I'm up for that because honestly, I think it's a lovely thing to, and you know, as we all do, I'm always taking pictures of books and sending them to my friends. Have you read this? Have you read this? Or even sending friends books. I think that's a beautiful gift. If you've read an amazing book, and gift.
All my gifts of books.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. I have another book. Is that book for me? Your book?
Of course. It was.
Of course. I've my signed copy for you there, Nicole.
I've even sent people gifts like socks, nice socks, but wrapped in a short story as wrapping paper.
Oh, see, I love that.
Oh my God.
I love that.
That's
like
two presents in one.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, listen, best of luck with the Writer's Nook. Thanks. Let's definitely do a book club without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah. And thank you so much for coming on. And everyone can check out your stuff. We'll put some links in today's episode. But thank you for joining us on the Big Chat, Anna.
Thanks for having me.
And I can't wait to see more of what you're doing and just, chat more about it all. So watch this space.